Peppa Pig. Peppa goes to hospital. Today we're going to visit Pedro Pony in hospital, Madame Gazelle tells the class. Pedro's leg is broken, and the doctors are mending it. Peppa has never been to the hospital before, except when I was born, of course, Peppa says. I'm wearing my nurse outfit, Susie Sheep says, because hospitals are very serious. But when the class arrives on the children's ward, the walls are full of colour. Ooh, they all say as they set off to find Pedro. Pedro is in bed with his leg in a plaster cast. Does it hurt? Zoe Zebra asks. It did at first, Pedro says, but not anymore. Do you want to draw on it? What's it like being in hospital? Asks Peppa. It's great, replies Pedro. Nurse gives me stickers and comes whenever I press this button. Vea. Another nurse comes with a trolley. Lunchtime, she says. Spaghetti and sponge pudding, please, says Pedro. Wow, you get to eat in bed, gasps Peppa. Dr. Brown Bear visits Pedro. You're nearly better and ready to go home. The bell rings. Visiting time has ended. Get well soon. Wave the children. A few days later, Pedro is back. Where is your plaster cast? Ask his friends. My leg is all better. It's a super leg now. Pedro says, Thank you for visiting me in hospital.
Peppa Pig. My Granny. My name is Peppa and this book is all about my granny. She is the best granny in the whole wide world. And she smells lovely too. My granny is an amazing babysitter. If we aren't feeling sleepy, she lets us play games. When she goes out, my granny always wears her favorite hat, even when she's splashing in muddy puddles. My granny likes to fill her garden with nice plastic things, but my grandpa isn't quite so keen. My granny loves talking to her pet parrot, Polly, even when she grunts like a noisy little piggy. My granny takes us on all sorts of days out. We like Pirate Island best. Sleepovers at my granny's house are lots of fun. Every morning her chickens lay eggs for our breakfast. My granny is a brilliant cook. She always bakes enough for everyone.
Peppa Pig. My Daddy. My name is Peppa and this book is all about my daddy. He is the best daddy in the whole wide world. And the funniest. My daddy has an extremely serious job. But I don't think he is very serious at all. My daddy reads about very important matters. But I know that bedtime stories are his favorite. My daddy loves taking us on trips to the beach. Especially when I bury him in the sand. My daddy is always extremely helpful and very, very brave. But sometimes I think he's just a teeny tiny bit clumsy. My daddy is very good at planning household jobs. But he doesn't seem to be that good doing them. My daddy says he likes to keep in shape all the time. But his favorite exercise is lifting the remote control. My daddy says he loves his little red car so very, very much. But I know he loves us more than anything in the whole wide world. Peppa Pig. Bedtime for Peppa. One evening, Peppa and George are finishing their dinner. It is almost bedtime. But the little piggies are not sleepy. Can we play outside for just a tiny bit? Peppa asks. All right, says Daddy Pig. But you must come in when we call you for your bath. Peppa and George go outside to play one last game before bedtime. Look, George, cries Peppa. Lots of muddy puddles. Peppa and George like jumping up and down in muddy puddles. Peppa, George, calls Daddy Pig. Bath time. Peppa and George run home in their muddy boots. Squish. Squash. We found the biggest muddy puddle in the world, cries Peppa. Are you and George feeling sleepy? Asks Daddy Pig. No, Daddy, says Peppa. We are not even a tiny bit sleepy. Before bedtime, Peppa and George take their bath. Peppa likes splashing. George likes splashing, too. Ho! Ho! That's enough splashing, says Daddy Pig. Let's get you into your pajamas. Oh, can't we stay in the bath a little bit longer? Peppa asks. Bath time is over, says Daddy Pig. Before going to bed, Peppa and George brush their teeth. Brush, brush, brush. Okay, that's enough brushing, says Mummy Pig. Oh, but I think our teeth need a little bit more cleaning, says Peppa. Snort. When you're in bed, Daddy Pig will read you a story, Mummy tells them. Peppa and George like stories. They hurry into their beds. When Peppa goes to bed, she always has her teddy tucked in with her. When George goes to bed, he always has Mr. Dinosaur tucked in with him. Are you feeling sleepy now? Daddy Pig asks. No, Daddy, Peppa says. We need lots and lots of stories. Daddy will read you one story, says Mummy Pig. Which story would you like? The Red Monkey book, please, says Peppa. Peppa and George like the Red Monkey book. So Daddy Pig reads them the story of the Red Monkey. Once upon a time, there was a red monkey. He had all sorts of adventures. After every adventure, this red monkey would take a bath, brush his teeth, and go to sleep. When Daddy Pig finishes the story, Peppa and George are fast asleep. Good night, Peppa. Sweet dreams.
Peppa Pig. Good night, Peppa. One night, Granny and Grandpa Pig came over for dinner. Later that night, Mummy and Daddy Pig were going out. Granny and Grandpa Pig would stay and babysit Peppa and George. It was almost bedtime for Peppa and George, but they weren't tired at all. Can we jump in muddy puddles for just a tiny bit? Asked Peppa. Okay, said Daddy Pig. But just until bath time. Peppa and George jumped up and down until they were covered in mud. But they weren't tired yet. Peppa, George, called Daddy Pig. Time to take a bath before bed. Peppa and George splashed in the bath until they were both nice and clean. You must be tired after all that splashing, said Daddy Pig. We're not even a little bit tired, cried Peppa. Snort, snort, laughed George. Peppa and George hopped out of the bathtub. Then they dried off and put on their pajamas very slowly. Then they brushed their teeth for an extra long time. Brush, brush, brush. Time to get into bed, said Mummy Pig. We want to tuck you in. Yippee! Cheered Peppa. Mummy and Daddy Pig were ready to leave. Remember, Granny and Grandpa Pig are right downstairs if you need anything, said Mummy Pig. Good night, Peppa. Good night, George. Mummy and Daddy Pig got in their car and left for the evening. George, are you away? Peppa asked. Oink, oink. George snorted. The lights were off and they were cozy in their beds, but they couldn't fall asleep. Granny and Grandpa Pig were watching TV when they heard little feet come downstairs. Peppa, George, you should be in bed, said Granny Pig. We aren't sleepy at all, said Peppa. Can we watch TV with you? Granny Pig smiled. Well, I suppose watching a little TV might make you sleepy. Hooray! Shouted George and Peppa. Peppa and George didn't like the TV show. Grandpa Pig, she said, can you play that game where you throw us up in the air and catch us? Okay, said Grandpa Pig.
but only one turn each. Later, Mummy and Daddy Pig returned home from their night out. Snore. The little piggies are asleep, Daddy Pig laughed, and so are the big piggies.